We are live, and by live, I mean we're pre-recording this so we can edit it down should we make any mistakes. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Beyond the Device. I'm joined today with the fantastic Caramie Huntington from Aina Push to Talk. What is Aina? What is Push to Talk? You'll hear it as PTT, LMR, all kinds of fun things. We're going to get into all that. Before we do, we're going to introduce Caramie to you guys, for those of you that are watching or listening. I work with Caramie, but you guys might not know who she is. Caramie, over to you. Can you please tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do at Aina?
Sure, absolutely. So my name's Caramie, obviously, you've heard. I work with Aina PTT. You're going to obviously learn about PTT here real soon. I kind of manage a good chunk of their North American business book of business. So I'm very excited to be here, very excited to be a partner with 3i. And
awesome.
Yeah. I don't know if you wanted me to lead into exactly what...
No, totally fine. Actually, before we even get into what Aina is, I think it might be good to talk a little bit about Push to Talk, because when you say PTT, it's like, what is even PTT? So maybe like level set a little information and education for the folks. So before we get into PTT, what is PTT? We hear it a lot.
Sure.
It's Push to Talk, but what does that even mean?
Sure. What does Push to Talk mean? Well, the kind of start of Push to Talk over cellular specifically was back with the old Nextel phones. I'm sure a good chunk of us that are at least over 30 years old probably know a little bit about that. If you're younger, then, well, I'm sorry, you missed out on a really good time. Those are some...
Missed out on a really fun time of annoying your friends.
Yeah,
constantly chirping them.
Constantly chirping in and saying hello.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah, so essentially that's kind of what it is being able to chirp in quickly. Much like a walkie-talkie, Nextel kind of created this original push to talk over cellular. So it was specifically over cellular, but it was specifically over their network also, and only on their phones, which actually was a Motorola phone, but they had partnered to kind of do that. It was going over the Nextel network. So anybody that had a Nextel phone and a Nextel network had the ability to chirp into somebody's pocket. Beep, beep. Hey, what's going on? How's it going? So that's kind of the side of it that is the consumer side of things, but they really took off when it came to business, like construction and public safety and things like that, where it's really necessary to have kind of immediate communication, where you need to, instead of, dialing, making a phone call, doing all that.
Looking up a number,
going through the initial chit chat that's, always... Hey, how's it going? Oh, I'm doing good. Nobody cares. It's just, hi. That
should be... nobody cares. It's just that in a certain situation, it's not like, how was breakfast? It's like, I got a guy bleeding to death. Yeah. I just need you to get past the pleasantries.
Or, hey, we need to move this truck here, or what have you.
Exactly.
Yeah, so, but in an enterprise realm, oftentimes, if they need instant communication, they don't want to have to wait for a dial, type in that, look up the phone number, dial, wait for it to start ringing. There's a lot of the, kind of just downtime that happens with that. So instant communication, or, Nextel's, what they called it was direct connect, was, just kind of walkie-talkie over cellular, but only over their cellular network. So what's cool about push to talk over cellular now is that it's not just push to talk over cellular, it's actually push to talk over IP, and it's not directly connected to any cellular, network. So you don't have to be on someone specific.
Yeah.
And additionally, it's an over-the-top type solution. So if have some people, some friends, or some coworkers, or some whatever on a Verizon network, and some of them on a T-Mobile network, and some of them on a, whichever network they, AT&T network, whichever network they prefer, you still have the ability to communicate with all of them with a single, quick, immediate push to communicate, essentially, solution.
Got it. That's very cool. I don't think a lot of people are aware of that. It's like, regardless of the carrier that you're on, you can still come over the top with this as a mechanism of communicating. I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of the cool thing. It used to be, very specific to that network or band or what have you. But not anymore. There's the old adage that there's an app for that. And that is kind of the thought process that, it brings it all over the top. As long as you've got the app and as long as the app is compatible with your device, then you have the ability to utilize it.
So is LMR the same thing as PTT essentially? I mean, it's not, right? Because LMR is the band, it's land mobile radio. But is that essentially the old school walkie-talkies use LMR? Am I getting that right, or am I way off?
So land mobile radio so a walkie-talkie could be a land mobile radio as well. It's a different way of kind of describing it. It really depends on what you're talking about. A land mobile radio could be a handheld device that's much like a walkie-talkie that's going over that, or it could be like an in-vehicle device where you've got a speaker microphone that's connected to that, or it could be in an office or something along those lines. A walkie-talkie is more of like a mobile type solution, but also not specifically an LMR either. An LMR typically uses kind of big towers that enable them to have a little bit wider scope instead of going device to device. So that's what most people think of when they think of a walkie-talkie, is that it's jumping device to device. Whereas usually like an LMR radio is utilizing towers that are going to help you kind of have a little bit bigger range, but you're never going to have the range of an IP type solution, or a nationwide coverage type solution, like what push to talk over cellular or push to talk over IP is.
So that's a big advantage, especially I think then if you're deploying a solution and you have to maybe use LMR, which might be outdated or expensive because of the limited availability of those towers. Probably a lot more cost effective to roll out PTT over LTE.
Right, absolutely. Especially since as I kind of mentioned, there's an app for that for everything now. Almost everybody is running some type of cellular type device. They already have a data connection. And running a PTT type solution isn't going to be adding to their cellular usage by very much at all.
That makes sense. Yep.
So, if you're already paying for one thing, why are you paying for a whole nother solution essentially for this LMR type thing? So it didn't used to be though so easy to get because, Nextel was kind of the only thing, and then it started to become the apps that did it, but you're limited by the devices that can run these apps, or you also don't want to deploy a $1,100 phone into a construction site. That's kind of scary.
Unless you bubble wrap it. Exactly. So current PTT solutions then, do you want to transition and maybe talk about some of the things that you guys have as an offering, and then we can talk about the different, because I know there's Bluetooth and Wi-Fi and LTE we just discussed, so maybe that'd be a good transition between those. Yeah,
sure. Talking about the different types of PTT solutions, as I mentioned, there's an app, which we all know nowadays, but maybe it's still not as apparent sometimes when you're thinking about the solution, is that apps on a phone or a tablet or what have you can run over, they can be connected to an LTE network, but they could also be connected to a Wi-Fi network, or you could be connected to a big network like a Verizon or a T-Mobile or a AT&T or what have you. But also there's a lot of companies that nowadays are starting to roll out their own private LTE networks, so that you have a little bit more control over them. You can kind of lock them down more, but it's just also so that you can ensure that your area is more covered with regards to having that connectability. So there can be dead spots with some of these different big carriers. But if you're rolling out your own private LTE, then you're going to ensure that you're connected everywhere on your job site or at your mine or at your company. There's a lot of different things why you would want to have a private LTE network. But yeah, so that's kind of the idea, is that you're always connected.
Mm-hmm. So I know we talked about cost, but why LTE for PTT? And we'll only speak in abbreviations from here on. Why LTE? Well, yeah, it's like, is it just cost?
It's hugely cost, but also hugely cost. You're definitely going to save money in going with a solution like that, but it's also you're not limiting yourself with range anymore. We could be sitting here talking directly with the app on our phones, and I could be pinging you just like the old Nextel days, and we're states apart, right? So there's no towers that you're having to work around, or no, those types of towers. You obviously still have the LTE network that you're working around, but you're just way less limited by range. You're less limited by just a lot of things. And then additionally, there's way more functionality on a lot of these Android and iOS devices that enable more functionality. So there's a little
right.
Less
Yes,
functionality.
that's a great point.
Right.
Yeah, because if you have a mobile device like I don't know if the J series phone is like a way older device from Samsung, but if you've got a entry level device like a Samsung or a Zebra or whatever, and then this is also an app on there, you still have all the functionality of that device plus this piece of it. So that makes a lot of sense versus just having a point to point device that you're using to talk or to annoy your friends, as we were talking about earlier.
Right. Well, a lot of the radios now, you've got channels, you've got, certain things that you can do that's very directly about one-to-one communication or, one-to-group communication, I guess. But you're still having to, get to specific channels. You're still having to have a lot of people on one channel and hear a lot of radio chatter, whereas with these apps and things that you can download onto these Android phones and things, now there's background stuff where you can be like, oh, I actually only want these 4 people to hear this at one time, or these 20 people to hear this at another time. There's just more functionality in an application.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can lock it down more, devices, I mean. And actually, another thing we don't typically talk about, but if you are using a mobile, like an off-the-shelf customer, like an entry-level cell phone or mobile device, or a tablet, and you are provisioning that to have the app on there, if you need that device for something else, you could always deprovision it, and then you're back to the factory settings of that device, and you can repurpose it versus having to completely refresh a fleet of devices that might be purpose-built. So it's a lot more modular. Something we don't really talk about a lot, but it's a very valid point. You have some customer success stories as well. Shaw Earthworks being one of those. Securitas, I've got a fun fact about those guys, and I think I might have shared it with you at one point. And then ControlCom as well. Do you want to go through those and talk a little bit about what the problems they were trying to solve, and then how we solved them with the Aina push-to-talk solution?
Yeah, sure. So interestingly enough, we kind of skipped over one thing, though, that was really what helped Shaw Earthworks kind of move on in their business. And we actually have a video about this that is really easy to find on YouTube if you care to look it up.
Yeah, and we'll put it in the description too for people so that they can see it. That's a quick and easy thing. It's okay.
Yeah. Sorry, still got the COVID hanging around in the old windpipes there. So.
It's a permanent thing. We just got a permanent COVID thing hanging out.
Yeah. But anyway, Sorry, that also brings us back to where we are today. Anyway, yeah, the Shaw Earthworks, they were essentially kind of having to phase out their radios. There was some, regulations that were necessary for them to kind of upgrade their really, really old radios. And they did, and then they basically failed them. Like one third out of all of their radios worked properly in the areas that they were trying to, service. And so
Only a third worked properly? That's awful.
yeah, and they spent, thousands of dollars on it too.
Yeesh.
You can see it in the video too. But lots of money that they invested in it, and then only a third of them worked properly. So that's not great.
Not
odds
great.
right there.
That's a bad investment. That's a bad investment.
Yeah. So they started looking into the other options, and another solution. Well, one of the solutions that we have is very specifically. So I know we've talked a lot about Android, iOS devices that can run this application that can support push-to-talk over cellular, push-to-talk over IP. We also additionally have our own device that is a very specific purpose-built device. So this is really great in instances where maybe you don't, you don't issue your company a whole thing of phones, or you don't want to, have to spend, like I said, spending money on an Android or iOS device these days can be pretty costly. It can be pretty expensive.
That is true.
And additionally, you're also putting this consumer developed device into an enterprise situation, which can typically be very, it can rugged, a situation where you need something more rugged than a consumer device, essentially.
Yeah, it's kind of the bubble wrap.
The bubble wrap comment, yeah. So we made another device that has the ability to run said app on it, and it's very specifically purpose-built. Actually, I have one here. I could show you a picture of it. Yeah, so it's specifically built with the app built in. All you have is this tiny area to see kind of what's going on, and that's meant to be. So additionally, maybe you don't want to be issuing phones or tablets, because then you have to worry about them utilizing YouTube or Facebook or any of these other apps or web pages that they can go to. So then you have to spend extra money on paying for an MDM and locking them down, and mobile device management for anybody that is unaware of. Again, we'll
and then threat defense and the endpoint defense, and then you're on the network, and it's an endpoint and managed detection response. Yeah, it gets a little long in the tooth, especially with all the security problems we're having in today's world.
Yeah, totally. So this device was kind of developed so that there's nothing except the app built in, and and that's what it is. It's just like an old walkie-talkie, except. And
what's the name of this one? Sorry to interrupt you.
This one's called Kepler.
That's the Kepler? Okay.
Yeah. And I don't actually have one of our voice responders to show you, because I just shipped one out for a customer demo. But anyway.
And that's the one
that one's the Bluetooth one that would go directly to the phone or tablet. Android,
and that's the one
iOS.
That's being paired with the RAM push-to-talk solution powered by Aina. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. We have a whole episode devoted just to that. There's some really cool stuff happening from the world of RAM and Aina. Be warned, or be aware, not warned. That was sound ominous. That was ominous for no reason. Be warned. Sorry. So Securitas, they rolled this out, going back to the device, the Kepler device, specifically to be able to use that push-to-talk solution, that app, but it's on a device, not actually having the devices out in the field, like a consumer-grade device that could get broken.
Sorry, no, that was Shaw Earthworks.
Or Shaw Earthworks, sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, Shaw Earthworks did, because they didn't want to have to issue devices. They have a more bring your own device type platform at their company. So they didn't want to have to make sure that an app worked with everybody's phones and go in and download an app on all their phones and be, dependent on them, not running Spotify and YouTube and everything else all over it, and then it not working properly, and then they can't stay in contact with them. So they said, okay, well, we're used to radios. This is very much radio, like basically 2.0.
It's a radio.
Yeah, it's a radio. It's just now you have the ability, instead of having to pay for the towers, instead of having to, ensure that those towers work for you, you can go over an LTE network. But what's really cool with this one too is we have a built-in actual walkie-talkie like functionality.
Oh, cool.
You can actually, if you have them and they're within range of each other, they can bounce back and forth. So if you aren't on network, if you can't connect to LTE, you can't connect to Wi-Fi, then they have the ability to still have a backup mode of communication.
Awesome.
So
see, this is the part where if I had one, I would have just chirped you in the video. See, it works long distance. I don't have this. It's just my phone. But yeah, so you still have a mode of communication even if everything went down, basically.
Correct. Yeah, within a certain range, because again, it's really going back to like what a walkie-talkie does, where it's their direct device-to-device communication. There is
correct. You're not going New York to California, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
That's where you need the push-to-talk over IP, over cellular, over Wi-Fi, what have you. Just like you would, any kind of phone. Yeah.
Do you want to talk about Securitas? Because apparently I can't wait to talk about them. I keep mentioning them. I remembered all the details of what you were talking about, but I couldn't remember the freaking name. Shaw Earthworks and not Securitas, but now we're talking about Securitas. And
correct.
Actually, some amazing. I wonder if anybody would know this without telling them. But it would be a fun thing to put in the comments if you guys know what Securitas originally started out as, the name of the organization before it became Securitas. If you guys know it, put in the comment section. I would love to see if somebody can know it without Googling it. If you Google it, it just, then it's not, it doesn't have the same trivia. Don't be a cheater. Unless you want to cheat, then I can't do anything about that. So what about Securitas? How did they leverage Aina?
Yeah, Securitas, they're basically a private security type company, in case you don't know who they are. They utilized basically our flagship product, which is that Bluetooth speaker microphone that I spoke to you guys about earlier. And again, when it comes to Bluetooth, it can be utilizing any device that has Bluetooth connectivity. To a certain extent, it has to have pretty good functionality when it comes to Bluetooth, but most devices these days do. Whether it's Samsung or iOS or Zebra or Sonum or there's a plethora of devices out there that we pair well with and that essentially marry well with, and a lot of these apps, these different push-to-talk applications work really well on them. So we have our own push-to-talk application. It's awesome, but we also have a myriad of partners that we work with that have their own push-to-talk applications that have been around for a while. So there's some with the different carriers that they have their own. And then there's other other companies that that also have their own push-to-talk apps. So, but like I said, it's not stuck on just a Samsung device. It could be an Apple device, a Zebra, Sonum, Motorola, Kenwood. There's a bunch of different ones that we pair with. But anyway, ultimately the device was rolled out with them because they wanted to. There was a couple different reasons, but they essentially, wanted to keep said device, their Android device, securely, firmly put in a pocket or somewhere where it wasn't going to get in the way of their security type duties. And since, like we've kind of touched on several times over now, a consumer type device is a lot more fragile. They wanted to have something that was also easier to engage with. So when you're trying to engage with an app on your phone, you're like, oh, got to unlock it, gotta like open it up, like, wait, where's the app? If it's running in the background, like, let's go find that app that's running in the background, which most of these push to talk ones are. Then you gotta find it, then you gotta push a button, and there's a whole lot of stuff that's involved in that. Whereas our Bluetooth speaker microphones, we've worked with all of these different, partners of ours, all of these different application partners, and obviously our own, to ensure that the speaker microphone itself, when you press a button, it can engage that application from a black screen. So you're saving battery also on your Android, iOS device, from a black screen, and be able to engage, the push to talk application. So you don't have to go in, find the app, push a button, which is really important. Also, this doesn't have to do with Securitas, but if you're driving or something like that,
Yeah.
you don't want to be trying to go touch a phone and
Well, it's illegal. You're not supposed to. I know
It's
we all
illegal,
do
right?
it, but we aren't supposed to. You're not supposed to be on your phone when you drive. But
Right.
yes, you can very quickly, if it's on your shoulder, everyone's seen, a police officer with their mic on their shoulder, you can just, quickly lean over and say something. And I'll say to the point of actually Securitas, if you're in a situation in security and you need to respond, I can't imagine it's you're pulling your phone out like, hang on, let me call this that's not really a good model. So you probably need to be able to access communication immediately rather than like unlocking it with your eyes, finding an app, and then calling something in. That's not really applicable.
correct. Yeah, another thing about that you mentioned when it comes to security is, you still see all the time these cops that you don't have it. They've got this like big bulky thing on their back poking them, and they've got the curly cue coming up to their other
Yep.
device. And they found that could be a hazard for them in
Yeah, they
choking them
they get
and
into a fight.
being able to,
Yep.
yeah, if they have to physically engage, a suspect, then that could become a hazard. So having a Bluetooth type solution is a little bit, you have less typically, there's nothing there to choke you with or to wrap you up with or to get you kind of like tangled in.
Yeah. And then you also so that was the solution. So you get the mobile device in the pocket or somewhere on the body, and then the actual Bluetooth handset somewhere else on the body, easily accessible.
Right. And then another reason that they chose it was for its ability to be a lot more crisp and clear. So that's also another thing that goes along with kind of being able to utilize the media over a phone rather than some of the devices that are more purpose-built. They're a little more like...
Yeah, as if anyone's been to the New York subway systems, hopefully not recently because they're dangerous, but the mayor will do something about that eventually. But fingers crossed. If you ever gone to New York City subway and you've ever heard the intercom announcements, you can't make out a damn thing that anyone's saying. It's like they have the microphone in the back of their mouth while they're saying whatever train is coming. I actually don't even know if they do that anymore. I haven't been to New York in years. But yes, the actual communication is not exactly crisp over some of those purpose-built devices because they're using whatever parts that they can source to make those devices.
Right. Yeah. And that's the same with, you go to the airport and you hear them talking on their walkie-talkie things too, or their, LMRs, and it's like, you're like, what? It takes a trained ear to understand. Yeah. Yeah. And you shouldn't have to train somebody's ear to understand.
Right.
Very important critical communication, which is what push to talk is immediate communication.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the other one was control com from a use case perspective. So do you want to talk a little bit about those guys? Was it control com, right?
Yeah. It is. It very similar kind of needs and wants as Securitas, though. Just being able to utilize a solution that is crisp, clear, has great audio, and that is, quick and efficient, that they can roll out alongside, consumer type devices that enables them to, keep the device more securely positioned, whether they put it in a mount or in a pocket or something along those lines. And, there's a lot. We haven't talked too much about the whole mount situation, but being able to keep a tablet mounted, or a phone for that matter, mounted in a vehicle and leave it there and not be worried about, kind of moving away from it, that's really important. Being able to stay mobile, but keep these very expensive devices in a more secure fashion, like in a mount or in a pocket.
Yes, they don't get lost because you don't want to replace them. That they're expensive to replace.
Or broken, or yeah.
Broken. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So Securitas and ControlCom kind of similar, and then Shaw Earthworks, very different use case, but there's at least some decent information. But you did allude to mounting and tablets and mobile devices, so maybe a good time to pepper yet again that RAM and Aina are partnering to bring a really cool push-to-talk solution to market for people transport, amongst other things. And that's all I'm going to tell you right now. We got a whole episode coming to it, and I'm going to allude to it one more again obnoxiously one more time before the end of this episode officially. But I also wanted to talk a little bit about competitive advantages for you guys. I think that's always a nice thing to highlight. Specifically, you don't manufacture in the China, which is a thing for a lot of people right now. The lead times coming out of Asia are huge, to the point of, and this is not an exaggeration or a lie. I met with a partner recently who was talking about this. 52 weeks. For those of you who aren't familiar with the calendar, that's a year. That's a year. That's a year. Can you imagine that? If you were like, hey, I need to get this, and it's like, sure, you can have it next year. That doesn't vibe. So you guys are not manufacturing in China. You guys are manufacturing out of?
We are manufacturing out of Europe, specifically out of Estonia. We do some part of our manufacturing in Finland, which is actually where our company is based out of. But good chunk of it is all out of Estonia, which is just over the sea from Finland. So we don't run into as many problems, when it comes to that. And that's a huge reason why also we're trying to partner with, 3i and RAM to bring this bundle together so that we can utilize, 3i as being able to hold that stock of product for us, so that we don't, if, God forbid anything, crazy happens again, we still have stock because it's all sitting at 3i, and we can just say, oh, we know who you can go get it from. And
yep. That's why like I said, I'm super excited about this because of what we're bringing to market with RAM, and also because you guys have a great solution. It's not just the RAM portion of this, but it's a very unique solution that I think is needed for communication market. It's like one of those things that's like, yeah, why haven't we disrupted this yet with, the ubiquitous connectivity of LTE? It seems kind of silly that hasn't happened sooner and more. The other thing I wanted to point out, I got my hands on one the other day. It's in the office for the RAM Aina podcast we have coming up with you guys. We're actually going to demo it with Ambrose. He's going to be on. Shout out to Ambrose Bragg. He's going to be demoing it, so I got a chance to play around with it. It's really well made. Like, it's got a good feel to it, and I think that's the quality piece of this. If you're pulling it in and out of a dock, it can't be, getting stripped of its connectors. Like, the thing is just very, very well made. So I just wanted to point that out, at least from my side. I don't know if you have any other additional things to add about the quality, or if there's something in the manufacturing process that you do, but maybe it's just taking points of feedback from your customer base. But I thought the thing was very sturdy, and it felt good in your hand. It wasn't like too tiny, or it wasn't too big.
Yeah, well, much like the RAM solution, it is mil-spec 810G. It's got all those different things that we put it through. So wind, dust, water, all of that has been taken into account. We specifically designed this device because we knew of the shortcomings when it came to some of these, different competitors. And honestly, our company came to be because of we designed this device and presented it to I don't know if you're familiar with Harris, or I guess it's LP Harris, but anyway, they only are needing devices that are very, 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 very ready for a environment that could be a little savage, okay. I guess.
That was five.
So,
I think
yeah,
was that 5 varies. I think did I hear 5 varies? That's the mil spec A10G is 5 varies. That's what that means.
Yeah, it's very, very important. Oh wait, there's 2 more.
There's 2 more. Seven. There you go. You guys also, I've talked about the partnership with RAM, as I've alluded to that multiple times, and we'll probably do it one more time. But you also have tested with a lot of the OEM manufacturers as well, and you mentioned that a bunch, but I just wanted to come back to it. From an iOS perspective or Android perspective, Zebra, I imagine Honeywell, you didn't mention them by name, but I imagine your devices work on Honeywell. Who am I forgetting? Sonam, Kyocera. I'm sure there's a plethora of others out there that would also work, but it doesn't, again, I think it's just the intelligence of what you guys have created. It's not going back to the Nextel thing where it only works on one person's product or band. It's just as ubiquitous as the LTE platform that you guys are manipulating or have used to get and proliferate this solution into the market.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself. That was perfect. But yeah, you're right. I can name all of our different partners. That would take a while. I think you named a good chunk of them, though, just right now.
We can move on. And we're done. Goodbye.
Hit 'em.
No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
No, that's... that.
But again, also thinking about all of the different push-to-talk app providers out there, too. We have ensured that their apps and our devices are work well, so that again we can stay ubiquitous in the market with regards to being able to provide a push to talk to solutions to someone, because you can provide an app, but that's one thing. To really bring the full solution together, you really need that the mount, the microphone, the whatever it is that really kind of comes into play for your specific application. But definitely a way to engage that application without having to boop 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 boop
on the cell phone.
Because then you kind of took away from the whole push to talk portion of it all, didn't you?
Yeah,
like
yeah, right.
You might as well just go back to making a phone call.
Yes, that is very true. Well, that will bring us to, I think, the end of our episode. Before we go, though, I do want to allude just one more time that RAM is partnering with Aina to bring a really cool push-to-talk solution to market that's going to be bundled exclusively through us, which is awesome, even more selfishly. But I think we're going to have the ability to solve a lot of problems with this. It's modular to an extent. We're going after, like I said, the people transport segment of transportation to start, but there's a lot more coming and a lot more partnership announcements as well. Do you have any teasers or anything to add to that? Like I said, we're doing that episode next week, so that'll drop pretty quick, and we want to get this information in the market for everybody. It might have something to do with FirstNet. I'm just throwing it out there.
Yeah, I think, like you said, people transport is definitely just the jumping off point. Yeah. I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity out there that's going to be uncovered and that we already are looking into. And I think what's really cool too is that we've got the super knowledgeable reps at 3R that know everything about these types of solutions and the types of markets that we should really be hitting. So I think it's going to be good.
I also think they're great. Yeah. I love our team. They're fantastic. Ambrose Bragg, Tony Gilchrist, Jalen Holly, Jonathan Shanky. Shout out to Danielle Zebel, our Director of Sales. Awesome team. Thank you, Caramie, so much for making time. I sincerely appreciate it. I hope you guys learned something. I know I always do when I'm with you. I thought this was an awesome episode. If you liked it, please click the like button. Subscribe if you want to hear more of these types of things. And also, if you guys want to post some comments in the comments section, let us know what you want to hear about these types of things. Or if you have questions for Caramie or myself or 3i or Aina, whatever the case may be, you can post in the comment section. Or if you have any direct sales questions or inquiries, you can reach out to us at sales, the number 3, EYETECH.com. That's sales at 3itech.com. Thank you so much for tuning in for another episode of Beyond the Device, and be sure to check us out for the next one featuring the RAM and Aina bundle. We'll see you on the internet. Bye, guys.